While the silver screen captured her as the epitome of a Hollywood dream, the real life of Hedy Lamarr played out in far more shadowed tones, rarely illuminated by stage lights. The world saw her beauty, hailed as the most beautiful woman in the world, but beneath that fragile title lived a woman of iron will, a brilliant inventor, and a heart intimately familiar with sorrow. Born as Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler in Vienna in the year 1914, Hedy was the only child in a wealthy and respected family. From an early age, she felt drawn to the stage, as though fate itself had stitched her future into the world of performance. And nothing, not rules, not parents, could stop her from leaving for Berlin before she was even legally an adult, determined to conquer the film industry. Her conquest began not with quiet footsteps but with thunder. At just 18, she starred in Ecstasy, a controversial film that shocked the world as the first to depict female nudity and on-screen sexual pleasure. The headlines exploded. Society condemned her. Her parents were horrified. But, as it so often goes, few knew what was happening behind the scenes. Hedy didn't want to appear childish by bringing her mother or father to the set. She promised them a fellow actor would accompany her. An empty promise. The real reason for her independence was far more romantic, or perhaps naive. During the shoot in Prague, she was secretly in love. But love soon gave way to manipulation. The director demanded she undress for a bathing scene. She refused and prepared to walk away, but they threatened her with the cost of the already filmed scenes. She was deceived, told the shots would be distant and artistic. But a hidden camera with a telephoto lens captured much more. When Hedy saw the final film, her heart sank. What followed was even more painful. Her parents attended the premiere, unaware of the film's true nature. The scandalous scenes shattered their vision of their daughter. To the public, she was no longer a promising actress but a daring girl, a curiosity. Hedy tried to explain, tried to speak of art, but her mother and father simply rose and walked out of the theater without a word. Wounded but unbroken, she returned to Vienna and soon portrayed Empress Elizabeth on stage. It was during this period that she met the man who would alter her life's path, Fritz Mandl. Wealthy, powerful, divorced, and, as it would turn out, dangerous. Born into a dynasty of arms manufacturers, Mandl had close ties to fascist circles. And though Hedy remained distant at first, he refused to back down. She rejected his advances at the beginning, but day after day, his intellect, his persistence, and his aura of control drew her in. Hedy fell in love. It seemed the start of a radiant new chapter. She married him just after turning 18, hoping for a love story worthy of cinema. Instead, she found herself trapped in a nightmare. Mandl did not want a partner, he wanted possession, a flawless object to be locked away. It did not take long for Hedy to realize she was living in a gilded cage, where her voice was ignored and her freedom erased. This was only the first chapter in a long book of pain, resilience, and discovery. Hedy Lamarr would go on to invent a technology that paved the way for what we now know as Wi-Fi. She would conquer Hollywood. She would adopt a child and later reject him. Her life unspooled like a reel of black and white film, its glamour hiding everything beneath. Genius, isolation, escape, and triumph. And perhaps behind every frame of her story echoes the question she must have asked herself time and again. What is the true price of freedom? And can anyone ever really understand you if you are destined to be unlike anyone else? Inside her lavish Viennese mansion, behind marble walls and velvet-draped windows, Hedy Lamarr lived in what felt like a gilded cage. She was surrounded by servants, exquisite gowns, glittering jewels, and a man who, by law, was her husband, but in truth had become her captor. His jealousy knew no bounds. He didn't just suspect, he surveilled. At his command, the servants eavesdropped on her phone calls, and if she uttered the words film or acting, the house would erupt in a fury of accusations. Twice she tried to escape. Twice she dreamed of freedom, but his power over her tightened like a net each time she struggled. Then came a blow no palace could shield her from. Her father, the quiet anchor in her stormy life, the one who always believed in her, died suddenly of a heart attack. The loss shattered Hedy. She dressed in black and never took it off. Colors lost their meaning. People became unbearable. Life turned into a frozen mirror where no reflection remained. For a year, she drifted through days like a sleepwalker, numb to the world. But for those who carry a fire inside, even the darkest fog eventually lifts. One day, she made a choice: to leave now or forever vanish into the shadow of who she used to be. Hedy gathered what little she could carry and ran, not toward fame but toward a chance at life. Her first stop was London. There, beneath the gray skies and glowing storefronts, fate intervened. Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM Studios, happened to be in the city. He had heard of her, or rather had seen her. He'd watched the scandalous film Ecstasy, in which she dared to be too alive for her time. Mayer was intrigued, but not convinced. He saw her as just another actress with a controversial past. He offered her $125 a week, a pittance. Hedy refused, but she understood that second chances rarely come. Learning Mayer and his wife were sailing back to America on the luxurious liner Normandy, she bought a ticket, and she turned that voyage into her stage. On deck, amid the hush of waves and clinking glasses, she spoke, she looked, she smiled. Not acting, but simply being. And she won him over. By the time they reached New York, Mayer had quadrupled his offer to $500 a week and handed her an MGM contract. His wife, Margaret, helped choose her new name, Hedy Lamarr. And with that, Hedwig Kiesler, the woman of scandal, was gone. A star was born. In Los Angeles, she started from scratch. She studied English, refined her accent at parties and galas, where she dazzled alongside men like Howard Hughes. Within 6 months, she landed her first role. And just as it seemed her life was finally unfolding its wings, darkness once again began to gather. From Europe came terrifying news. Germany had annexed Austria. Hedy's mother, Jewish by birth, was now in grave danger. But Lamarr was not the kind of woman to wait. She knew the value of time. Every cent she had earned went into rescuing her mother, bringing her safely to America. She succeeded, and while fleeing the shadow of war, Hedy stepped into the light of the silver screen, brilliant, radiant, like a flame cutting through the night. Audiences were mesmerized. Her beauty was unlike anything they'd seen. She became a star overnight. Her face lit up posters. Her eyes filled the dreams of millions. But behind the scenes, things weren't so luminous. Roles worthy of her talent were few. More and more, she felt Hollywood loved her face, but didn't hear her voice. And that voice, the mind behind it, was just as extraordinary as her beauty. But that is another story entirely. At the height of Hollywood's golden age, behind the dazzle of the silver screen and the relentless flash of cameras, Hedy Lamarr was quietly living a double life. One in which the glamorous actress became an inventor hidden away from the public gaze. She had no scientific degrees, no formal technical training, but what she did possess was far more rare. A deep hunger for meaning, an unstoppable urge to create. In the rare moments of silence between exhausting studio contracts, she would retreat to her private world of sketches and formulas, drawing, calculating, searching for something that fame and fortune alone could never provide. Yet Lamarr's passion for invention was only one layer of her complex and deeply private existence. Hollywood continued to shower her with praise and admiration. Lovers came and went like scenes flickering through celluloid. Still, there came a moment, almost as if she surprised even herself, when she tried to settle down. She married film producer Gene Markey and almost simultaneously began the process of adopting a child. A boy named James. Markey gave the child his name, but little else. Their lives quickly split into parallel tracks. He remained embedded in the world of film and society, while she was left navigating motherhood, responsibility, and growing solitude. Inwardly, Hedy flourished as a mother, but a quiet ache began to take root in her heart as the world around her darkened. The Second World War crept ever closer. She managed to rescue her mother, but could not forget those who could not be saved. In the year 1940, when a German submarine sank a passenger ship carrying 90 children, Lamarr was devastated. The grief was too much to bear, and she knew she had to act. Her mind turned back to her first husband, an influential arms dealer. She remembered the conversations, how he talked about targeting systems, weapons technology, the way deals were made and machines were designed. What once seemed like useless memories from a failed marriage suddenly became powerful knowledge. She reached out to a friend, composer George Antheil, and together they began working on an idea that could change the course of the war. Their invention was a revolutionary concept, frequency hopping technology, designed to protect radio-controlled torpedoes from enemy interference. They patented the idea and submitted it to the United States Navy, only to be met with disappointment. The military dismissed it as too complex and impractical. Later, citing her Austrian roots, the government seized the patent and labeled it foreign property. It was more than a rejection. It was a betrayal of justice, a loss of faith in a system she had hoped to help. But Hedy did not surrender. She redirected her energy into another kind of war effort, becoming the face of war bond drives, raising millions for the troops. Around the same time, she filed for divorce from Jean Markey. In court, she revealed they had spent just 4 nights together in a year and a half of marriage. The illusion of romance was shattered. Yet fate had not finished with her. At a Hollywood canteen event, a gathering place for actors, soldiers, and volunteers, she crossed paths with actor John Loder. Once married in the distant year of 1938, he was now free. The spark between them was immediate. In 1943, they were married. A golden chapter began. Hedy's career surged forward. Loder embraced James as his own, and 2 years later, the couple welcomed a daughter, Denise. For a time, it seemed like the long-awaited happy ending had finally arrived. But happiness proved fragile. After Denise's birth, Hedy began to suffer from strange, debilitating pains. Doctors, unable to find any physical cause, diagnosed psychosomatic illness. She began making regular trips to Boston for treatment. The golden dream cracked, and through those cracks returned the quiet shadow of loneliness. A loneliness she had tried for so long to bury beneath the shimmering lights of Hollywood. The intricate blueprints of her inventions, and the soft, stubborn hope that she might one day change the world. For 2 long years, she laid her soul bare on a psychoanalyst's couch, unpacking ghosts from the past, dredging up what she thought had drowned forever. The emotional excavation was exhausting, but when it ended, Hedy Lamarr emerged transformed, ready for change, ready for a new life. Her first step toward this quiet rebirth was to part ways with MGM, the studio that had been her creative home for nearly a decade. Then came something more intimate. In 1947, Hedy became a mother again. Anthony was born, the 4th heartbeat under her roof. And yet, happiness, true to her story, remained fragile. Her 3rd husband, John Loder, became another casualty of this wave of transformation. Their split was civil, but divorce always leaves echoes. Around the same time, she sent her firstborn, James, away to a boarding school, perhaps to protect him or maybe to shield herself. Their bond slowly faded, like an old reel of film losing clarity. By the time James was 11, he was spending holidays with one of his teacher's families. Hedy saw it as betrayal. She cut ties. He was still just a child. Then, in 1949, the screen lit up with her presence once more. Her role in Samson and Delilah returned her to stardom. Box office triumph, thunderous applause, a sea of flashbulbs. Everything she had once known came rushing back. But so did the weariness, the punishing schedule, the loneliness, a yearning for something simpler. A man who truly loved her, who could help with the children and with the bills. Chasing that dream, she traveled to Mexico, and under the burning sun, she met Teddy Stauffer. A musician and restaurant owner, he seemed vibrant and carefree, the polar opposite of the reserved Loder. But his charm was a mirage. Like her first husband, Teddy was painfully jealous. His outbursts were sudden and terrifying. After 9 months, before it spiraled further, Hedy filed for divorce. Her choices in men, it seemed, only worsened over time. The next affair defied all reason. She never even names him in her memoirs, only calling him Sam. It was a grim and disturbing chapter. He was obsessive, violent, and eventually crossed a line so grotesque it's hard to fathom. After she refused to sleep with him, he produced a life-sized plastic doll made in her likeness, and forced her to watch as he made love to it. In that moment, it might not have been so surprising if Lamarr found herself missing the cold logic of Nazi-occupied Austria. When she decided to become a producer, potential investors lined up. But behind many of their promises lurked ulterior motives. Still, one of them won her heart. Their joint film never materialized, but the romance led to marriage. In 1953, Hedy wed businessman Howard Lee. She left Hollywood behind and moved to Houston, into his home, hoping she had finally found peace. They stayed together for 6 years, a personal record for Lamarr. But when the marriage ended, the cracks were impossible to ignore. In court, they accused each other of abuse. Hedy's lawyers either failed her or joined the chaos. She fired all three. Then, in what felt like the next act of her own cinematic tragedy, she found a new attorney and fell in love again. Her sixth and final husband, Louis Boys, was not who he claimed to be. After 2 years, she divorced him, saying she had spent $500,000 on him and endured both public and private humiliation. Yet through all the wreckage, through the roles, the scandals, and the affairs, there remained another Hedy Lamarr. One few recognized. A brilliant, overlooked inventor. Her concept of frequency hopping would later become the foundation for modern wireless technologies, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. She even came up with a fizzy tablet meant to turn water into soda. Failed, but was bold and inventive just like her. A woman whose beauty stunned the world and whose mind outpaced her time. Hedy spent her life chasing love, understanding, and peace. And somehow, she always remained just beyond the frame. Like a song left unsung, a formula unfinished, a story never fully told. She was born as if out of a scene from cinema's golden age. A woman with the face of a goddess and the mind of an inventor. Hedy Lamarr would go down in history as the most beautiful woman in the world. But behind that glossy image was someone who fled tyranny, imagined the future, and eventually became a prisoner of her own reflection. Back in the distant 1930s, a young Hedy married Fritz Mandl, a wealthy and powerful arms dealer whose close ties to Nazi leadership turned her life into a gilded cage. She would often find herself staring out the window, dreaming of escape. Early attempts to flee failed, but after the death of her father, the only person who seemed to truly understand her, Hedy knew she could no longer afford to lose. So she began to listen more carefully to her husband's conversations. Secretive meetings with generals, officials, and shadowy men who smelled of war. She gathered secrets like weapons. Then one night, disguised as a maid, she slipped out into the darkness. Paris, London. Behind those glamorous names lay fear, flight, and the taste of freedom. In another, more mythical version of her escape, she adorned herself with all her jewelry at a lavish dinner and vanished into the night, taking with her a fortune and not a single trace of regret. A legend followed in her wake, but ahead of her lay America. The glamour of Hollywood, the flash of cameras, directors mesmerized by her gaze, cool and warm at once. But Hedy didn't want to be just another beautiful figure on the screen. At the height of World War II, she teamed up with composer George Antheil to invent something far ahead of its time, frequency hopping technology, the foundation of what we now know as Wi-Fi and GPS. The military ignored their idea. Only in the 1960s, when Lamarr had already faded from the spotlight, did the U.S. Navy begin to use the invention. In the years that followed, she received numerous honors for her contribution to science. But by then, the recognition was no longer for the actress, but for the ghost she had become. Old age was unkind. Obsessed with preserving her beauty, Lamarr turned to plastic surgery, and it wasn't time but the surgeon's scalpel that ultimately disfigured her face. With each failed procedure, she withdrew further from the world. In her final years, she saw almost no one, not even her own children. Her voice, over the phone, became her only thread to reality. She died in silence at home at the age of 85. Her son Tony returned her ashes to Austria and scattered them in a forest near Vienna, where her story had first begun. Even in death, Hedy managed to astonish. One of the most shocking revelations came in 2001, when her son James discovered a document that changed everything. All his life, he had believed he was adopted by Lamarr. He had no idea she was his biological mother. 61 years of secrecy. Worse still, James had never known the identity of his father. It turned out to be John Loder, Hedy's third husband, with whom she had begun a love affair back in 1938, when he was still married to someone else. When Hedy became pregnant, she feared for her career and concealed the birth of her child. When Loder later adopted James, he had no idea he was signing papers for his own son. Hedy Lamarr lived a life defined by escape, fleeing a husband, Hollywood, age, and the truth. But within that odyssey was something deeper than the pursuit of beauty or survival. It was the fight of a woman to be fully herself, brilliant, complicated, and imperfect. And perhaps that is where her true beauty lies.